guys, so this is going to be my first little YouTube series on fitness and conditioning. We're going to start it kind of in reverse with recovery. So not really where you'd expect to start with fitness, but a really important part is giving your horse a good recovery. So that's what we're doing today. Today is an active recovery session. So active recovery is just where it's like a light workout just to keep the horse moving or athlete moving so that they minimize risk of them getting tight and having any issues from being tight. So my guys went to a clinic yesterday where they both did show jumping and cross country. So quite a big workout for them. So today they're just going to be in light work. Barry's had a light ride with the Equisystem wrap and we just did a little bit of poles as well, but mostly it was lots of stretching, lots of getting him straight just to make sure that he is over his back and he's moving so he's not going to get tight and stiff and reduce risk of injury. Now Baz is having an equissage, so I equissage my horses quite a lot, also really good for making sure they don't get stiff, helps with muscle development by increasing blood flow. Sorry, I still have the flu. And Barry's also having a post-workout meal with my fave, Precision Equine Intensive Tissue Repair Powder. So they just put out these, which are the 30-day ones, but you can get the 10-day course as well. This isn't sponsored. I've just been using this product for almost 2 years now, and it's made a huge difference to my horses. Big fan. Barry put on so much muscle over his back the first time he did the 10-day course. I had to get him a new saddle, so it really does work. I'm a big believer. If you've got an event or a horse that you're trying to put condition and top line on and nothing else is really working, this stuff is amazing. I also use their bars, but I mainly just use their bars when we're out and about because it's a bit too expensive to give them a bar every workout. Yes, Barry, you're on film. Also just started raining, so I'm going to wrap this up here. The next clip you'll see is me riding Barry. I'll do a little voiceover of our ride and what we're doing. And yeah, hopefully before it rains too much, I'll get Arrow in and I'm going to lunge her as well. So I'm going to lunge her over the same exercise I rode Barry over, and I'll do a little voiceover narrating what we're doing there. And Arrow's going to be pretty unhappy because she hates being worked in the rain. So this was Barry doing the little exercise I set up for the day. He does have the Equisystem wrap on, and as you can see here, he is being really lazy and looking really stiff. He is swishing his head and his tail and kicking out at flies and looking at stuff going on outside the arena and just generally trying to faff about and not get on with things. That's just what Barry is like on the flat at home. He is surprisingly lazy. So I've cut out most of this just because the first 15 minutes of this ride I was just walking him around in like a diamond pattern, asking him to be straight through his body and walk forward, and that's really boring content. There's also not much I can say besides here I'm flexing him out, here I'm asking him to be straight. Real boring. So I did that for about 15 minutes and slowly he became a bit straighter through his body. Barry will take any opportunity he can to bulge out through his shoulders and go crooked through his neck and just overflex his neck and not move his body and all that lovely stuff. So now he's a little bit softer. He's coming through a little bit nicer, even though he's still being pretty lazy. At least he's stretching his neck a bit. Ideally, I would like him to take his nose out further and stretch his neck a little bit more, but that's just something Barry really struggles with. It is his conformation. He's very uphill and short through his back. He finds it much easier to compress himself down than to lengthen and stretch out. Arrow is the opposite, and you'll see that in her clips. But basically, this is what I did for the first part of our ride. The pole exercise I've got set up is 4 poles, and they are 5 of my feet length apart on the ground. So I just set them up by putting 1 pole down on a bending line, walking 5 of my feet length from the middle of that pole on a bending line and putting the next pole down. So they are probably about 6 feet wide on the outside and about 3 feet wide on the inside. So now Barry's had a good trot. I'm just going to trot him back and forth in between the poles, just getting him to bend and flex a little bit and just loosening up his body more. So he does have the Equisystem bandage on here as well. I've already done another video talking about what that does. If you want to go and look at that, I will link it as the next video. So I always give my horses a good canter before I do any sort of trotting over poles, just to get them loosened up through their back and through their legs, just to stretch their hamstrings and their hindquarters. You want to make sure that your horse is really over their back before they do any sort of pole exercise. The poles are ideally there to help them stretch their hind legs underneath them more and help engage their core and lift their back. But if they're stiff before they go over the poles, then they're just going to invert and sort of scramble, which is the opposite of what you want them to do. So same thing here. I've still got my reins pretty long. Ideally, I would like Barry to take his head and neck further forward, but it takes him a long time to actually do that and to be able to stretch himself out. So usually I don't get that till the end of a session, and we are probably only about 20 minutes into the ride. I think I only rode him for about 25 minutes total, so the actual poles were quite a small bit of the exercise. I don't really have... Oh, now I'm taking a break to cough. And now I'm going to walk Barry over the poles so he can have a look at them. So I don't really have a set time for active recovery. Usually I just try and make it quite a quick ride and don't ask them to do too much. So I don't ask them to do anything really complicated, just to use their body properly. Okay, so now I'm going to walk Barry over the poles so he can have a look at them and just get a feel for how far apart they are. Barry is a bit of a anxious, panicky horse, so that's why I show him the poles first, just so he doesn't scramble over them. If you've got a green horse or a horse that struggles with their coordination, isn't very careful with their feet, I would walk them over it a good few times before you ask them to trot over it, just because, as I said, you don't want them to invert and scramble. It sort of defeats the purpose of doing this. And now Barry gets distracted by the horse from next door coming over to use the arena. So it takes me a couple of minutes to get his mind back on the job, because he wants to see where the other horse is going, and his trot has gone to crap a little bit again. So the only reason I left that in is just so you could see that definitely not perfect. And that wasn't a very nice first attempt over the poles. Like, he's still being very careful with his feet, which is nice, but he is a bit short and choppy in his stride. Yeah, he's just distracted. About halfway through doing the poles, I eventually figured out that I needed to ride him a lot straighter through them, so be straight as the first one and maintain a little bit more of that outside flexion, and then he did them nicer. Also, in the clips I've slowed down, if you have a look at his feet, you can see that when he doesn't get the perfect distance to a pole, instead of lengthening and stretching that front leg to get over it, he will put in a shuffly little half step and shorten his stride. You'll see the difference when Arrow does the poles. She does the opposite of that. She'll pretty happily stretch over the poles, but Barry takes a bit of convincing. Nothing I can really do about that except keep trying to ride him forward, and as I said, I eventually figured out if I rode him straighter through them, it was easier for Barry. I'm guessing that's because the straighter I keep him, the more he can push off his hind leg and the more sort of energy that creates, so that he's more comfortable to lengthen his stride. Again, I'm not a professional. We are not perfect at this. This is just what I'm inferring from what I felt when I rode him, and also just the reading I've done about different types of pole exercises and stuff like that. So now just changing directions, and Barry finds it much easier going around on this rein. He finds it much easier to bend on this side, but because of that he will push his shoulders out and sort of run out through his shoulder. So this way I just have to be extra careful that I'm keeping him straight through his body. I really should have a little bit more outside flexion than what I do, and not get too caught up in the direction that we're going. So he will quite happily bend around to the right, but then he'll run out through his left shoulder, like bulge his shoulder, and not be straight through his body. So I've just got to keep an eye on that. And that's just because I don't want all that energy to escape out his shoulder. I want him to be connected and straight through his body. So as I said, he can push off from behind, blah, 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 all that dressage terminology business. So that was pretty much it for Barry's ride, just trotting him over the poles. I try and take him to the middle of the poles, and then towards the end push him more towards the outside of the poles, just to encourage him to stretch more. But it's just a work in progress. So yeah, hopefully you found that useful, and you'll see the comparison of Arrow doing this exercise on the lunge and see how two very different horses do the same exercise. So I just realized I didn't really explain what the intensive tissue repair does or what it is, and it's basically like a protein powder or protein supplement specifically designed for horses. So it's just like a protein powder that you'd use if you went to the gym and worked out. You'd have it afterwards, and it helps with muscle recovery and muscle building. So protein is made up of amino acids. Now there's crude protein, which is the protein source as a whole, which would be things like hay and grass and things like copra. They are all high in crude protein, but that's not necessarily all usable protein, because protein is made up of chains of amino acids. So if you think about the amino acids as each little link on the chain, there's going to be limiting amino acids, which means there's some specific little links that each chain needs for the horse to be able to absorb it and use that protein. And most commonly, lots of common sources of protein that our horses get don't have enough of those specific little links. So even if you look at your horse's diet and go, yeah, it's got lots of protein in it, if it doesn't have the right sorts of protein or high quality protein with lots of limiting amino acids in it, then they're not going to be able to absorb and use that protein, which is where a lot of people do get stuck with feeding, because they're thinking, I'm giving my horse everything it needs, it's not really gaining top line, it's not really gaining condition as I'd like. And usually I found it's just because they don't have enough of those specific types of amino acids, and that's what the intensive repair has. So Kate, that founded the company, she has made sure that this protein source is specifically designed for horses to have all the amino acids they need in it. So you just give that to them after they've done a workout, within 20 minutes of working out ideally, and that's going to help with muscle building and muscle recovery. Hopefully I've explained that well enough, but I will link some articles in the description below if you want to have a read about limiting amino acids and crude protein, and what are some other sources that your horses can get those limiting amino acids from. Hopefully That makes sense. Sorry if I'm like sound really out of breath. I'm getting over the flu and I don't have the best lungs even when I'm healthy. Okay, on to the next pony. Another voiceover. You guys are sick of my voice as I am. I've had to record this a couple of times. So you keep coughing in the middle of it and there's no pause button. Anyway, same exercise now with Arrow. I'm just going to lunge her over it. She's got the Equisystem wrap on as well. If you want to know more about that, check out the other video I did. But Arrow is a little bit bum high at the moment. She's gone through an awkward growth spurt, which means she can quite easily end up on the forehand just because of her conformation. She's built downhill, so it's easy for her to move downhill. So the Equisystem wrap is helping with that, as well as doing lots of transitions up and down when I warm her up, just to get her sitting back on her haunches a little bit more. So another good canter before I trot her over the poles, just to get her warmed up. And she trips a little bit on that last one. She was distracted by something outside the arena, but now she's got her mind on the job. Arrow is super, super careful with her feet. She hates knocking poles or anything like that, which is good for me. So another big difference between the two horses, Arrow is way more expressive in her trot. She has lots more hock and knee action than Baz does. You'll also see she's quite happy to stretch out over the poles. If there's not a great distance to that first pole, she will stretch and lengthen her stride to get over it, whereas Barry will put in that awkward little shuffly half step. So two horses that can be more different. Barry's built really uphill and short through his back. He finds it hard to stretch down. Arrow is really, she's not super long, but she's built a little bit downhill. She finds it quite hard to compress herself, so she finds the collected stuff a lot harder. So she finds it much easier to go to the outside of the poles and lengthen her stride than to come to the inside of the poles and compress her stride down. So same on this side. Sorry if this is boring. I did cut out a lot of the warm-up and the transition stuff, just so you guys don't have to watch me lunging my horse for 10 minutes. So now she's had a good canter, I can start trotting her over the poles. And added in a few freeze frames so you can see how the poles get her to engage her core and lift up through her back. So really good to get that back lifting after doing quite a lot of jumping and hill work. She did hill work on Saturday, and then the cross-country course we trained at on Sunday had hills. So now I'm just popping the side reins on. They are on really, really loose. It's just to give her a bit of contact that she can push into. The Equisystem band and the poles, they're encouraging her to really push from behind and create a lot of power and energy behind. And just having a really light contact on the side reins just gives her something to push into and will make her lift her back a little bit more over the poles. So let me know in the comments below if you have any questions or queries or anything like that. Again, this is just what I'm finding helps with my horses. You do you. So you can see on the freeze frames that she's really engaging her core. She's lifting. The hind legs are coming underneath her pretty well. Just getting that back lifting, getting her loose through the hindquarters. You can do this with the poles raised. I didn't today because today was just a light recovery session. If I'm really focusing on strength, then I will have the poles raised. You can also add in more poles and make this exercise bigger, but again, just for like a light recovery day, 4 poles is plenty. Another good thing about this exercise is because it's quite adjustable with the stride length, you can take them to the outside to make the stride bigger, to the inside to make the stride smaller. Usually it's suitable for a lot of different sized horses or horses with different strides. So if you've got multiple horses to do, like I do, you don't have to change the poles around to suit each horse. Obviously, if you've got like a really tiny pony and then like a really big horse, you will have to probably. But yeah, handy exercise to have, minimal setup. You can do it ridden or lunging and gets good results. Gets them bending through their body, unlocking behind, stretching. And yeah, happy with that. Good girl, Ari. She's all done. Oh, are you tired, Arrow? Are you tired? Oh, Bob. So in addition to the protein supplement, Arrow is actually also having another supplement today. She's having some vitamin C paste with bioflavins. So that's just an antioxidant paste basically. So antioxidants, probably heard that word before, but when the body is metabolizing a lot of oxygen, like from exercise or stress, then the byproduct of that oxygen metabolization are free radicals. So free radicals can damage healthy living cells. It's sort of like, I don't like using the word, but like a toxin in the body. And a good way to cope with that, or the way the body copes with that, is antioxidants. So antioxidants help absorb the free radicals and reduces oxidative stress. So Arrow's feeling a bit tired at the end of the clinic yesterday because we did fitness work on Saturday and galloping is not really her thing, so she was probably a bit tired from that. And then she did cross country yesterday morning, and then by the end of her show jumping lesson in the afternoon, even though she had a good couple of hours off between, she was just feeling tired, and she did pull a couple of rails, which isn't like Arrow. So I'm going to give her this vitamin C, not vitamin B, paste. She just gets 5 mils of that. Normally during eventing season, my guys get this every 4 weeks or so, just to keep up with the extra free radicals in their body from extra high intensity exercise. And usually they get vitamin B paste as well, but they don't have any at the moment. She does not like it. It doesn't smell great. I get why she doesn't like it. Yeah. I know. She knows already. I know, I'm sorry. Good girl. Oh, I know it tastes funny. I'll give you lots of treats later.
Hi guys, so I'm home now. As you can probably tell that I'm not in a barn, and I'm also clean. I had to stop filming at the barn because there are a lot of other people there, and even though I don't care, like I'll happily vlog and talk to my phone in front of anyone because there is no shame in my game. I feel like it is a little bit rude because then everyone else has to be kind of quiet, and I'm also being really antisocial by ignoring everyone else and just filming myself. It's a bit weird. So I also feel like every other person on YouTube has like a nice pretty background, but I have like a fridge and a washing basket and some like boots and Pilates mats. Maybe I should like do something about that. Anyway, I thought I would just wrap this video up here. Basically, the whole point of the active recovery is to minimize any soreness and stiffness in your horse and maximize your training schedule. So if you've ever been to the gym or done like really intensive exercise and the next day you wake up and you're feeling a little bit stiff and sore, it's from all that lactic acid buildup in your muscles. So the idea is to do a little bit of low impact, low intensity exercise on that first day after the high intensity exercise, just to get the blood flowing and help that lactic acid drain out of the muscles. So if you imagine you did really hard training over the weekend, or you went to a competition and ran cross country or something, then on that first day after the high intensity exercise, your horses just sat around the paddock, didn't really do much. The second day, they might still have another day off, sit around the paddock, not do too much. And then the third day, you try and do like a training ride, probably going to be feeling a little bit stiff. They might not want to go forward, they might not want to lift their back just because they're feeling not so great in their bodies. So active recovery can really be anything. It could just be taking them for a walk in hand and then doing some like stretches in hand. Always stretch when the muscles are warm, never stretch a horse cold. That's how things tear. Just had to say that. Anyway, or it could just be like giving them a really good equissage or something like that. Whatever you want it to be, the idea is just to get some movement in. I really like the pole exercise, as I've already said probably a million times, good for lifting their back and stretching and blah, 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 blah. I won't go into it again. But I thought I would also just summarize the products and the supplements I used in the video as well. The Precision Equine I already talked about a little bit. So I use their intensive tissue repair powder, sort of preparing for a big comp or event. I just burped, sorry, that was real gross. So I use their intensive tissue repair powder at home, and then out at comps or training hard, I'll use their bars, just because it's really easy to grab a bar and use, and the bars also have BCAAs. We'll talk about that another time, don't worry. There's lots of boring, nerdy nutrition talk coming at you right now. So the intensive tissue repair protein powder I used in the video, really good for building up top line muscle. So the intensive tissue repair powder I just use leading into comps now, because I'm just trying to maintain my horses. They already have pretty good muscling and good top line and everything like that. But yeah, any more information you want about that product, I would go and check out their website. So it's Precision Equine. This isn't sponsored in any way. It's just because I really like the products. I met Kate, who started the company a couple of years ago at a competition, and she is just lovely, and she really cares about horses and getting a good performance out of your horse, as well as ensuring that they're feeling good and minimizing risk of injury. So the other thing I talked about in the video is the vitamin B complex paste. So I didn't actually have any of it in the video. So B vitamins, there's 12 of them all together, and they all do slightly different things in the body. But in general, B vitamins are really good for metabolic processes and energy. Okay, so bear with me here. This is the part where it might get a little bit tedious, but I'll do my best to explain it in a way that makes sense. So amino acids make up protein, and as I touched on before, the amino acids have to be in a right sequence to be used by the body. So say you've given your horse a source of protein like lucerne or copper or something that is high in crude protein but doesn't necessarily have the right sequence of amino acids, or the protein that can't be used, it can't be stored either. So it first has to be converted to either a fat or a carbohydrate to be stored. So fat is stored in the fat cells in the liver, and carbohydrates are stored in the muscles. And for that conversion process to happen, there has to be an adequate supply of B vitamins, because they help with those metabolic processes. So that is what I find the vitamin B complex paste helpful for. It's just to ensure the body has an adequate nutrient supply to do all those different conversion processes. Hopefully that makes sense. Let me know in the comments if that just sounded like absolute dribble. I will try and answer any questions I can, but yeah, I just did. So I will link some resources in the description bar that hopefully explain that better than what I just did, because I gave it a shot. Hopefully you found that sort of helpful or interesting. So that's just what I found helps with my horses. It's definitely not something you have to do, but if you are curious about like maximizing your horse's recovery and increasing their performance, then definitely do your own research and talk to your vet, see what they recommend. This is just what I've found helped me. Hopefully you found that informative or helpful. Let me know in the comments what you think and what you want to see next. So I will either be doing a show prep video for my first comp of the year, or I will be doing a Liberty training video. Let me know which one you want to see first. And if you could like this video, subscribe if you haven't already, and leave me a comment. I really like engaging with you guys in the comment section. And thank you so much for watching, and for everyone that has already subscribed to my channel and are being active in the comment section. I really like making these videos and I really like engaging with you guys, so thank you for that, and I will see you for the next one.